G'day, I'm Owen. You've joined the pub test where we are continuing the Jack the Ripper victim series, and this is the 5th video. So if you're waiting for that long video, it's still coming, but if you are following these as we release them, then let's get into it. So the 5th victim on this list, and many claim should be an actual official Ripper victim, is Martha Tabram. Now, she was born Martha White in May of 1849, and I do find it funny that she is actually known by that last name Tabram, because that was only a very small part of her life, really. She was the youngest of a few siblings, but it was in 1869 that she married Henry Tabram. Now, they had 2 children together, 2 boys, but then by 1875... they are no longer together. Now, so the story goes is that Henry said to her, "You've got a choice to make here. Do you want to be part of the family, or do you just want to keep drinking? Because drinking is ruining your life." Well, she chose the drinking. And so he moves her out of the house. But he doesn't totally cut her off. So he still pays a certain amount of money to her weekly so she's not homeless. But then it's said that she would accost him on the street and say, "Look, give me more money, give me more money." So he says, "Well, you know what, I will, but I'm going to now drop the amount of money I'm giving you per week because every time you see me, you're getting more money out of me." But then he finds out she started a relationship with a bloke by the name of Henry Turner, who was a carpenter. He wasn't very affluent, but he was an honest bloke. And him and Martha were then together on and off for the rest of her life. Mostly on, we would say. But then Henry Tabram cuts off any financial support to Martha. And oddly enough, she was more known as Martha Turner after this, because she was with Henry Turner for a lot longer than she was ever with the other Henry. But regardless, on the death certificate it says Tabram, and hence that's the name that has stuck when it comes to talking about her. Yet even Henry Turner would say that, look, her biggest problem was the drink. If she got any money, she was spending it on alcohol. So if you are going to the pub that often, just want to point this out, and you're handing your money across the counter, you are not buying shares in the business. It is not an investment strategy. You are donating to their cause, and they don't really care that much about what happens to you, really. So poor Martha, we can see, obviously had a major addiction issue. There was not much mental health help back in those days, and obviously with people being addicted to arsenic and alcohol and who knows what else, well, you were pretty much left to your own devices, and that didn't work out very well for some people, particularly ones like Martha. But it was on August 7th, and interestingly, it was around the bank holiday, and this was the same time that Emma Smith was murdered. Obviously a few months later, but it was around this bank holiday that Martha and another person, Pearlie Poll, go out to find some work, because by this stage Martha is now having to work the streets to survive. Now, it's reported that they met up with 2 soldiers at some point. They split up to carry on whatever activities was going to lead to some money changing hands, and that's the last Martha is seen of alive that anybody knows. Now, here it does get interesting, because it is said that Martha went to George Yard, which was really, really dimly lit, and that's where people would go if they were doing activities that they didn't want other people to see, but there were buildings there as well. Now, someone returned home to one of the buildings there in George Yard at about 10 to 2 in the morning. And when they walked past into this stairway, they didn't see anything. But it was around the same time, at 2 a.m. in the morning, that PC Barrett sees a military-looking bloke standing near this same building that this other person's just walked in and saw nothing, and said, what are you up to, buddy? He says, well, me mate just went off with a girl and he'll be back soon and then we'll be off. And so the policeman thinks really nothing more of it. Someone about an hour and a half later goes into this building in George Yard, sees what they think is a homeless person sleeping near the stairs. Now, they said that is not that uncommon, so they didn't think anything more of it. Now, understanding lighting is an issue, and it was very dark, so you could forgive the person for thinking that. But it was about 4:45 in the morning, and remembering light is now coming into this building a little bit. So the person coming down the stairs then sees Martha, sees the blood, goes and gets a policeman. The policeman comes in, and then he doesn't disturb the body, it's said, but then the whole investigation happens. And yes, it was Martha Tabram, or Martha Turner, as she was more known back in the day. The injuries to her were absolutely dreadful. 39 odd stab wounds. It is said that probably 2 different knives were used, so she's had all sorts of injuries to major organs. As you know, I don't like going into gruesome detail, but I find this quite surprising because there's a few things to look at here. Firstly, there was a couple with the last name of Hewitt who basically where Martha's body was found, they would have been right beside it. There wasn't much way you could not have heard something, so they asked them. And first it's like, well, didn't hear a thing. This comes as a total shock. And then the wife says, but I did hear someone screaming out murder. But, that was down the street, and we hear that all the time. So I didn't really give much thought to it. We will get back to that, because there is something strange about that eyewitness account. Now, interestingly, they were not asked to go to the inquest. And I question that, and you'll see why as we go through this particular case. But you see, PC Barrett, that saw this soldier-looking person, he was then asked to come and try and identify the bloke that he saw, because it was known that Martha and Pearlie Pole had gone off with 2 soldiers. So they try and find these 2 blokes. Unsuccessfully. Even at the lineup where PC Barrett is, he's said, that was the guy there, and they've said to him, instead of picking him out, do you want to have another look? Because apparently the guy he picked out had a few medals, was a bit of a decorated soldier, so he picked out a different bloke, saying, oh yeah, no, now I'm clear it was him, and they worked out it wasn't him. Why that happened, I really don't know. But that's not the end of the mystery when it comes to Martha. Because at the inquest, they do say it was murder by person or persons unknown. And that's the way that case has remained since then. But the papers were linking Emma Smith's murder to Martha's, saying, look what happened. And when the next victim we talk about, they actually used all 3. They already had pinned Emma Smith, Martha, and our next victim all together, saying someone is committing these crimes. Now, oddly, or rather we could probably understand that Emma Smith's murder drops off this list quite quickly. And the reason is because it was different to the crimes that were following. But people have since dropped Martha's off the list of Jack the Ripper crimes for a couple of reasons. Firstly, one medical person said that the perpetrator was definitely right-handed when it came to Martha. And yet, I've never really brought this up in this series yet, but because it was said that Jack the Ripper had to be left-handed because the way the cuts were done, and a medical examiner actually stated that, though it was disputed even by medical people back in that day, the common misconception is that the Ripper had to be left-handed, and it mainly took hold because people back in that day thought left-handed people must have had something wrong with them and the devil was in them. So naturally this psychopath had to be left-handed, which I find slightly confronting because don't tell anyone but I am left-handed. So maybe I should be on the Ripper list, who knows. But the thing was, when people believed that these crimes against Martha were committed by a right-handed person, well, then they said, well, she couldn't have been a Ripper victim. Added to that, they say that all the Ripper victims were strangled, and yet Martha wasn't. So therefore, she could not have been a Ripper victim. She was just violently attacked with a knife many, many times. And so there was not the mutilation that happened to the others. I find that really, really odd, just quietly, and how that possibly could have been the case. Because of the Hewitts. Now, if someone is being attacked in that building right outside your door and they are not unconscious, you're not just hearing murder once. There's a commotion going on. You would have had to have heard something. Even if the person was unconscious, I would find it strange that you didn't hear what was going on outside. So I don't know if anyone's ever really looked into the Hewitts at all, about their story or situation. I'd be interested in that. So if you know any information, throw that down in comments, because their whole story just seems a bit off to me. It doesn't quite add up. But the other thing with the strangulation is the photos they show at the mortuary for Martha do suggest that perhaps she was asphyxiated first. Now, there's no definite proof to say she was, just as though there's no definite proof to say she wasn't. In fact, it would seem more likely that she was. Also, the position of most of the victims, how they were found, matches the ones that are considered Jack the Ripper victims. And we're going to cover one that is definitely considered one of the 5 victims that doesn't match any of this anyway. So why she is discounted as being an official Ripper victim so quickly today, I'm not 100% sure. Now, I'm not saying that Jack the Ripper performed the crime against Martha, but you might want to check out what I think of the Jack the Ripper saga as I'm saying this as well. Maybe not necessarily the same person perpetrated all the crimes. But also what is of note is Pearlie Pole disappeared. Not permanently, she did come back up, but when the inquest was on, they couldn't find her. And eventually she did surface and came forward, but she could never identify the soldiers. In fact, she said, oh, no, you're looking at the wrong soldier brigade. It wasn't them, it was this other mob. And all of them had rock-solid alibis, which suggests that either she was not wanting to get someone into trouble, because maybe she knew they couldn't have done the crimes. All they did was go off together, so no need to cast aspersions against them. Or she knew that they had committed the crimes, and therefore was worried for her own safety. It's possible she knew something else and didn't want to come forward because maybe no one would believe her, but then there is also still that gang theory that floats around that maybe she knew who did this crime, but she did not want to put herself out there once again for her own safety. Well, we don't know. But that also, to me, needs answering. Why was Pearlie Pole so reluctant to come forward with any information about what happened? So like all the other 4 victims we've discussed up to now, no one was ever caught and no one was ever charged for the murder of Martha Turner Tabram White. Well, that will change when we go on to our 6th victim. So thank you very much for watching. As you probably work out, we are now moving into the official Jack the Ripper victims with our next video. So yeah, look out for that one. Let me know what you think of this too. And if there is more detail about the Hewitts or even Pearly Polar, I'm very interested to see further detail, because that's going to help as we move forward as well. But again, if you are enjoying this, hit that subscribe button. It is the only thing holding this channel back at the moment. Do the pub test a favour and smash it like it's a nice schooner of beer. Just don't enjoy it as much as Martha did. I'm Owen, you've been watching the pub test, and we will see you on the next one.